Congressman Eric Swalwell, welcome to Mea Culpa. It's certainly been a while. I know I've been asking for a while. Lots going on in your life, my life, Mea Culpa's life. So I'm going to just jump right into it because we have a lot to talk about. And I want to start, with the big news. Yeah, thank you, my brother. Really good to see you. Yeah, appreciate you. So I want to talk about some really big news. You've officially launched an exploratory committee for governor of California.
I'm all in. No, not exploring.
It's not exploratory anymore. Great. You're all in. Yeah. All right. Governor, California, 2026. And I got a lot of friends out there, and I intend to come out there and
I'll need
shake
that.
A lot of hands. Make you jealous. People like me so much out in California. You can't imagine. But the question I really want to ask you, my friend, is why step away from Congress now? Especially when Democrats are widely expected to retake the House in the midterms.
Californians are scared and prices are too high. And you're absolutely right. I would love to, again, go into the majority, work on these investigations, hold these guys accountable. But I have watched a very effective governor be a fighter, protector against the Trump administration, someone who takes a show, don't tell approach. You know, Chuck Schumer sends 8-page, strongly worded letters. Gavin Newsom takes this guy to court. He goes to the voters and gets 5 seats back to match the rigged districting in Texas. He is able to kind of mimic and mirror what the president is doing on social media in an effective way. And voters across California have told me that they see me and Newsom as 2 of the most effective elected officials taking on this guy. And it finally clicked for me that they were saying, he's leaving, there's a void, what are you going to do to step up? And so I did not plan on this. If you had told me a year ago I'd be running for governor, I'd say you're crazy. But after talking to my family, my wife Brittany, who and, talking to our team and talking to supporters, we see a path to, 1, do the job of keeping Trump out of our homes, streets, and lives, and then 2, the biggest and most important job post-Trump is to write the story of a new California, bring down costs, grow small businesses, modernize the state, and really, be a governor that believes you should be able to take your first job, have your first kid, and buy your first house in the first decade, in your first decade of doing all of that, rather than waiting till you're 40, which is the average home buyer age in California right now.
Which is amazing. Now, you may remember we were in Chicago and, I met Brittany. And the first question, of course, I asked is, does Eric have a lot of money? And she said, no, why would you ask me that? I said, I'm shocked that he managed to marry such an amazing woman. I said, there's got to be something about him, and so on. But then the real question that I threw out.
And I didn't meet her until my second term. And
you told me that.
She's gone from the front desk to the front office in the hotel world, where she worked at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas, which is kind of like the hospitality training ground for the United States. Did her time there, was like an assistant overnight sales manager and front desk manager. And now today, works on the ownership side. And so she's seen all parts of the business. She hustles. She helps, to raise 3 kids with me. Mm-hmm. And you're talking.
She's truly amazing.
You're talking to the bread loser of that equation.
Oh, she said that too. But more importantly, you'll remember that I turned around and I said, Eric, why don't you run for president? And I'll never remember. Brittany turned around and looked at me and she goes, no. Yeah. So I'm really curious. Right? You remember that? And I was like, but you're fierce. You are very much like Gavin Newsom in personality. You're young, you have the look, you have the wit to you, you have the ability. Because I watched how people interacted with you. They truly like you. And that's half the battle of being a president. Yeah. First is you need people to like you, respect you, and know that you can do the job. Watching you on television, watching you during the impeachments, watching you, how you hold these Republicans to account. People dig that, and they dig you for it. And that's why I had made that comment to you. So I'm really excited for your gubernatorial race, because there's no doubt in my mind that you're a winner in this.
Well, thank you. And I also believe I'm smart enough to know what I don't know but where to go, to bring in that expertise. And that is something that I've just learned, frankly, over the years. I've been in Congress for 14 years, Michael. You could say I was a child when I was sent there, but I've learned a lot, being at the right hand side of Speaker Pelosi, as a member of her leadership team during the first and second impeachment, and of course, during the consequential first 2 years of the Biden administration with the legislation we've passed. And yeah, you're absolutely right. It's going to kill me to not be there in the majority as we bring all of these folks to account. But our great state, which is a nation state, the greatest country in the world, as I like to say, it needs a fighter and a protector. And what we did with Prop 50 by getting those 5 seats back, I think it shows that it wasn't just California saving itself, it was California saving the country.
Yeah. It's funny. I may need to put Brittany on with my wife because I am dying to take over Jerry Nadler's seat. Could you imagine me up there? I mean, it would be another sort of like Jasmine Crockett, another Jamie Raskin, another.
I call it murderer's row. Yeah. The murderer's row of
damn straight. So Eric, you currently serve on the House Judiciary, I believe, and the Homeland Security Committees. And you have truly become, and I'm inspired by it, by the way, one of the party's strongest communicators. What makes you confident that California needs you more in Sacramento, right? Yeah. More than we Democrats, me specifically, the entire country. We need you in a potential new House majority.
Yeah, well, I can communicate to Californians what the stakes are. And I do that as a father of 3 little kids, an 8-year-old, a 7-year-old, a 4-year-old. So when people say there's a cost crisis, yeah, I'm living it. I get it. Yeah. It's real. And I understand, why it's frustrating to work so hard and not be able to buy a home until you're 40, as I said. And so on day one, I'm going to declare a cost emergency and be able to communicate, as you just referenced, with, a shorter, simpler approach than what you typically get out of Democrats, why we have to do this, why every outstanding home application has to be approved or denied within 90 days, because to me, a goal without a deadline is just a dream. And so to really surge the supply of housing in California so you have more inventory, more young families have lower cost options. So that's going to be my first priority, and is to communicate why we have to do that. Second, to communicate, why we need to grow small businesses. Small business growth in California is in decline, and that not only creates jobs, but as as somebody who has worked in the private sector, it creates more business-to-business revenue. So I'm going to give every new small business in California for their first 3 years a tax holiday for state income taxes, so you can focus on getting your business plan together, getting off the ground, getting post revenue, hiring employees, and then having stability so that we can have, ideally, a multitude of new businesses that are bringing back revenues to the state in post year 3. I want to modernize the state, Michael. I want to digitize the DMV and have the DMV go virtual and allow those DMV employees to service Californians from anywhere, which means the 218 DMV offices in the state, we could mostly sell off to the private sector and invest that money in putting the best resources in our classrooms for our kids. So, communicating these concrete ideas to Californians that we're going to write this new California story on costs, on business growth, and modernization.
One of the things that you could also do is deal with the banks, because they're impossible to deal with, especially even if you're making decent money. The banks are so regulatory that it's almost impossible. I don't care who you are to get a mortgage today. Well, if these banks don't follow certain new guidelines, open up help out the SBLICs, the state banks, and let them provide better terms and longer terms. And I'm not talking like Trump's 50-year, instead of pushing people for 5-year or 7-year, start it out at a 10-year where people can actually one day own their home, not at the age of 92. If you're starting at 40, it's going to take you 50 years to pay it off. 90, right? That's things that I'm with you 100%. But I do want to touch on the fact that you personally have developed a national profile because of your role in both Trump impeachments as well as your consistent battles. I've never seen anybody. There's a few of you, but Not too many. Certainly it ain't Chuck Schumer. It certainly ain't Hakeem Jeffries with the constant battles with MAGA figures like Jim Bag Jordan or Marjorie Taylor Greene. Did that visibility factor into your decision, or was this purely driven by California's challenges?
It's California's near-term challenges, which is the next 2 years with Trump and what he's done, chasing immigrants through the fields where they work, putting troops in our streets, and raiding the cancer research funding from our universities, which only makes cancer funding and cancer cures farther out of reach. So being the fighter protector in those next 2 years to make sure that we are able to survive those 2 years as a state. And then, as I said, a longer term, writing that new California story on costs, growth, and modernization. But I have a lot of experience taking on Trump in real time. I'm the only person in the field, one, who has a job, and two, the only person in the field who is in the arena, like right now, taking on this guy. And so the Russia investigation to the Ukraine investigation in the first impeachment manager in the second impeachment, testifying in the Colorado case to keep him off the ballot for what he did on January 6th. And then, of course, having the January 6th lawsuit and leading the January 6th effort for Democrats in this Congress. I know this guy. I know that the only side of the ball you can ever be on with him is offense. And that's what I want to do on behalf of Californians to get us out of this Trump hell. And as I said, to a new day, a new California.
You're also the only one on the ballot that can turn around and say, hey, Mike Cohen is my buddy.
Yeah, proudly.
Right? Which is probably more important than all the other stuff. But I do want to, I wanted to seriously ask you, because you are legitimately Trump world's most consistent critic. You see the governorship as a broader platform to push back on the federal overreach that we've seen during this term, especially, as you just brought up, immigration, education mandates, federal retaliation against blue states, and especially California?
It's personal to me in a number of ways. First, I lost my mom a couple months ago to cancer. And this guy, with his idiotic approach to governing, is cutting cancer research by 40%. And I've always believed that a budget is not just a moral document, it's an IQ test. And it's the stupidest fucking thing in the world to take away hope for cures from cancer patients. And in California, we are cutting edge, leading the way on that. So we're going to need a governor who can create a research fund independent of the federal government, go across the world to get investments into that fund so that we can still lead the way on cancer research. It's personal because one of my neighbors in Livermore, California, this gentleman named Miguel Lopez, he worked for 30 years in our community, had come over here from Mexico, raised 3 kids. Michael, he worked at the winery in our town where my wife and I were married, goes to his immigration proceeding, which is an indictment on how long it takes to even adjudicate these cases. He's been going for decades. And in April, gets picked up at this proceeding, taken into custody. A judge tells the Trump administration, do not deport him, give him his due process. They do it anyway, send him to Mexico. I went and visited him in Mexico a couple months ago. I brought him his favorite ice cream from our local creamery, and I told him I would not forget about him. I've written legislation to make him a citizen, but there are people like Miguel across our state, hundreds of thousands of people like Miguel who are either been deported, in process to be deported, or do not leave their homes because they're afraid they're going to be deported, and they're enriching our communities, and they need a fighter protector. So yes, I'm going to take that same energy and approach that I've taken in the Congress to the streets and communities of California.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. Like I said, I've known you long enough to know if there's anybody that's willing to put on the gloves and go a few rounds, it's certainly.
I'm happy you asked me to come on, because the beauty of a podcast is, it's not like a TV interview where it's just a couple minutes back and forth. I hope your viewers know that I don't wake up every morning seeking to go to battle with Donald Trump. I truly got into public service to fight for my neighbors, but this guy just gets in the way. And that's where I'm going to go right through him when he does that. But it comes from a father who was a police officer. And I was raised by a working class dad, a mom who worked her ass off with a multiple number of different jobs, raised 4 boys. 2 of them became police officers. I became a prosecutor. But my earliest memory, when my dad had ascended to become a police chief, he was cleaning up corruption in this small town that we had lived in. And he was kind of under the thumb of a corrupt mayor and city council who wanted him to make cases go away in the community. And he refused to do it. They called him to carpet in a public hearing, which is just crazy. But I mean, this is like 1986. And they told him at a public hearing, if he did not reverse some of the cases against the council members and their friends, they would fire him. And one of my earliest memories, Michael, was my mom and dad in the living room talking about what they would do if he got fired. And I remember it because I was a kid and I just thought he was like literally going to be put in a fire. That's why it like stuck with me. But my dad said, fuck that. I'm not going to reverse your cases, be a part of your corruption. And they fired him. And he packed up his little family, moved us out west. That's how we made our way to California. He would never work in law enforcement again, which I know just kills him that, you know, he would have to leave law enforcement. But I saw a man who was willing to lose his job to do what's right. And that's what is in such contrast to the weak cowards I see in the Republican Party today who do everything to keep their job and tell me privately they know what Donald Trump is doing is wrong. And so I was raised by that guy who was willing, you know, to lose his job to do what's right. So I don't care if Trump's a Republican, a Democrat, an independent. He's just corrupt in my mind. And that's why I just want to make sure that the public knows it and he doesn't get away with it.
See, I'm glad that you brought that up because people think that every day everybody gets up, whether it's on Midas Touch, Mea Culpa. By the way, you know, the reach on this podcast has literally, I started this when I was on home confinement to be able to have a voice that got out past my apartment. And, you know, we've now over 500 million downloads on
so
Mea
proud
Culpa.
of you.
We're doing like 500,000 between our YouTube and between the audio. So yeah, to those of you who are in California, Eric Swalwell is the real deal. All right. And anybody from California, anybody around the country that wants to help the campaign, by all means, where's the place to go?
EricSwalwell.com and Eric Swalwell on
How unique.
Instagram, TikTok. Yeah. Keep it simple.
How unique. So
you know, Aaron Sorkin, who's like a California legend, wrote The West Wing. He once said, "Shorter is better, simpler is best," and I try and take that approach in my campaign.
Well, it's a great one. Meanwhile, when you look back at this year, because we are now in December, hard to believe, Trump's mass deportation orders, 30-country entry ban proposal now, DOJ lawsuits against political opponents and critics, blah, 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 whatever else. Is there a single moment that made you say, I can't just legislate from DC anymore? I actually need executive authority for California?
Yeah, it was really that experience with Miguel going to Mexico and his wife, Rosa, telling me that every Sunday night, and again, he doesn't live too far from where I live in Livermore, that every Sunday night, 3 generations of their family gather for dinner, and there's an empty chair that is to reflect where Miguel would be. And just knowing that, California, in my district in particular, like 40% of my constituents were born outside the United States. We're the 8th wealthiest district in America. So there's a straight line between like their immigration, their resiliency, and the wealth they've created. And to think that this guy, this president, is going to fuck with that. He's going to terrorize them and also just tank our economy and opportunity. And it's not, as I said, it's not something I planned, but it's something I'm equipped to do. And that's why I'm going to do it. But this year he has tested us, as you said, in every way, right? I mean, we have found, and you have worked intimately and up close and personal with this guy, that America's in a position where the most thin-skinned, insecure person who's ever walked this earth coincidentally also happens to be president of the United States, which means if you make a joke about him, he throws you off the air. If you criticize him and you're in elected office, he uses the Department of Justice to come after you, something that you're, uniquely familiar with. If you're a blue state governor and you push back against him, he pulls your cancer funding or your port security funding or your clean energy funding. If you're a military veteran who tells our military members that you don't have to follow illegal orders, he threatens to, hang you. And so that's who this guy is. Now, what we have on our side and what's going for us is we're getting our confidence back and we're building momentum. So what we did last month in Virginia and New Jersey and statewide in Pennsylvania, of course, in California, we won. And we won with big numbers, double-digit numbers in the Virginia and New Jersey governor's race. Voters believe that this administration costs too much as far as what we pay, and costs too much as far as what we have given up in our rights and our freedoms.
Yeah. Well, let me then say this, because he's constantly attacking Governor Newsom, claiming that California is a shithole state, that it's all screwed up, everything is bad in California. I do want to remind my listeners that California has the fourth largest economy in the world, which you, Governor, are going to be in charge of. So you have massive power. I wonder if you're thinking, if whoever the president may end up being in the future, whoever tries to pull this bullshit again, going after California, making all of these idle threats against them, pulling cancer research, is there a way to pull money away from the federal government and then just, fine, you don't want to give it to me there, we just won't send you our tax dollars? Yeah. California actually pays for, I think, a half a dozen delinquent red states, ruby red states. Your payments to the federal government as a state covers their losses.
Like New York, we're a donor state, right? And we don't just pay and cover their losses. We invent and create cures that everyone benefits from, across the world or truly across the country and across the world. So what I'm going to do as governor is to protect us from ever being in a position like we're in with Trump today. I'm going to create a California Research Fund and ask the public and private sector leadership to go across the world, to go to Asia, to go to Europe, to go to Canada, to go to the Gulf, and seek investments in this research fund that will help us lower our energy costs, lower the cost of housing, and make sure we increase and expand what we're doing in research for cures, because we can't count on this guy to protect us. And so the next governor has to have relationships that they can leverage. I do.
Listen, you all know that I don't get much peace between the news cycle, the legal circus, and trying to keep this country from sleepwalking into disaster. I'm running on fumes most days. So when I finally crash at night, I actually need a mattress that doesn't fight back. Enter my Lisa mattress. In my case, the hybrid. And let me tell you, this thing has changed my entire relationship with sleep. I used to think I was fine, falling asleep like a guy who got tranquilized in the neck. But then I tried the Lisa, and suddenly I'm like, wait, hold on. This is what real sleep feels like? It's supportive. It's plush. It hugs your body like it actually likes you, which is frankly more affection than I get from half of Washington. The second I lie down, everything stops. The noise, the stress, the day, it's all gone. It's like a staycation that you don't have to pack for. Lisa really dialed in how this thing adjusts to your body and your sleep position. So whether I'm on my side, my back, or starfishing like I just gave up on life, it truly works. Premium materials, full body support, and all designed and assembled right here in the USA. And get this, free shipping, easy returns, and a 120-night trial. That's 4 months. I mean, that's more grace than I've ever gotten from anyone. And look, this part, it's important. Lisa donates thousands of mattresses every year to folks who need a safe, comfortable place to sleep. So they're not just selling rest, they're giving it. So do yourself a favor. Go right now to lisa.com for 30% off mattresses plus an extra $50 off with promo code Cohen, exclusive for my listeners. That's Lisa, LEESA.com, promo code Cohen for 30% off plus an extra $50. Support the show, support your spine, and tell them we sent you. So again, that's lisa.com, promo code Cohen. Go now.
So as you know, I oversaw the CIA for 8 years. I went all over the world to nearly 40 countries, meeting with prime ministers, presidents, kings. I'm going to leverage those relationships that I've maintained on behalf of Californians because, again, we can't count on our own leader, which is crazy to say, but we cannot count on our own president to help us. And what did we see in the first couple days of this year as fires ravaged Altadena and the Palisades in Malibu? We saw as soon as Donald Trump came into office, just 2 weeks later, that he would not give us or make sure that we were taken care of in the fire disaster relief that every other state would get if they suffered a hurricane, a flood, an earthquake, that he went after Californians. So yes, Californians are pissed off. They see a president who's declared war on them, like literally by putting troops in the streets, but also figuratively in the way that he has denied us resources. And as you just pointed out, has tried to like dehumanize us and demean us with how he describes our great state.
Yeah. So, I want to switch topics for a second because, again, based upon, your position there right now in the House, I want to talk about the mess that even exploded on Fox. And I'm talking about Pete Hegseth claiming that he watched the double tap strike live. I mean, this is playing Fortnite for him, with a couple of kegs of beer, right? Literally watching double tap strike live, even though no such scenario, right? I mean, they claimed that at first he didn't, then he did, and then trying to pin blame on Admiral Bradley and so on. What was your reaction? I know mine. What was your reaction to this fabricated narrative coming out of Hegseth, the Department of War, and this administration?
So let's start at the top, because the president is the commander in chief, right? And if you were to believe him, he is saying, I don't know what you're talking about. That's what he keeps saying every time he's approached for something that Hegseth or Patel or Noam has done. So either he's, the dumbest in the dark commander in chief we've ever had, or he's just lying through his teeth, or I guess third, he is suffering from serious health issues that, would not allow him to function as commander in chief. So then work our way down to Hegseth. He has not denied, Michael, that he committed a war crime, which is quite alarming. But I want to kind of lay out for your viewers, because I know they're smart people and they understand and want to be able to explain to others why this matters. The reason we don't do follow-on strikes to defenseless combatants is that we don't want that to happen to us. So the purpose, and again, let's not even accept them at their word that these were narco traffickers, because they won't give us the evidence that they were narco traffickers, which should be kind of the foundation of even having this argument, that they have proved to us that these guys are narco traffickers. They won't do that. But if you even give them the benefit of the doubt that these guys are narco traffickers, you take a strike, you stop the boat. So the threat has been neutralized. There's survivors in the strike. In further strikes after this one that we're talking about, they would actually go pick up survivors out of the water and return them to their country, which shows by those acts that they know what they did in this first strike was wrong. Then you have lawyers who have resigned from the Department of Defense, again, to me suggesting they don't want to be a part of this at all. So this Congress, unfortunately, is not going to do much to hold Pete Hegseth to account. But boy, he should be ready to become familiar with, the Armed Services Committee, the Oversight Committee, the Judiciary Committee. There's a lot of folks who are going to have jurisdiction. And the problem, Michael, is my Republican colleagues, they believe, one, that they're invincible, and two, that even if they're not invincible and we were to take the majority, that we don't have the balls to hold them accountable. And I'm telling you that Robert Garcia, Jamie Raskin, some of the leaders who are going to be chairing these committees, they are all in to bring transparency, and it's all going to come out.
I don't know why they would think that you're not going to hold them to account. This is such a simple thing to do. I mean, I don't believe that what Hegseth or Trump or whoever else may be involved, I have a hard time declaring this as a war crime. And everybody keeps saying, why would you say that? It's a war crime. It's a war crime. Eric, I got to be honest with you. I wasn't aware we were at war. So how can it be a war crime if we're not at war? You know what I see this as? I see this as murder one.
Yeah.
When
Yeah,
you
it's a
have
great point.
somebody, when you have somebody literally floating in the water, hanging on to wreckage for dear life, right? Because they're not 25 feet out from the shoreline. They're kind of far out there in the water. They're clinging on to debris from the wreckage after a drone strike to an aluminum 18 to 20 foot boat that, by the way, I don't think and I don't think any members of Congress on either side of the aisle know exactly what was in those boats.
Yeah.
I don't think any information has been given at all. When they're clinging for dear life to the wreckage, as you said, they're supposed to pick them up. They're supposed to do a double tap, another strike on defenseless individuals. And I don't care if they even still had guns wrapped around their neck. They have been neutralized. They're in the water. And you're right. That's the responsibility, because if it was the other way around, that's what we would want. In fact, that's what we would expect.
You're so right, Michael. Like we're almost accepting their approach here that this is a war or a conflict, and they have not gone to Congress. They haven't justified in any legal way why we should do this. And if I just step back and speak on behalf of Californians, I can't speak for New Yorkers. Going to war with Venezuela ranks about 200th on what people care about and what the president promised. Again, we have to keep hammering this guy. He said costs are coming down on day one. We're at like day 320, and he's 0 for 320. And he's taking on these pointless wars with Venezuela. He's fucking around with other countries threatening to go to war. And everyone is just asking, like, what about me? I was told my costs were coming down. I was supposed to see some Doge check. I was supposed to see some tariff check. You haven't seen any of that. You've just seen, as you said, the
skyrocketing prices. Yeah, skyrocketing prices as a result of tariffs. But even greater than that, we are accepting the notion that we are at war. And I don't know, I wasn't the greatest student. I did, I like to read what I wanted to read, not what the teachers wanted me to read, but I somehow remember that it's Congress who declares war, not the president, not the secretary of war. Right?
And that's shame on a Republican Congress, right? Shame on a Republican Congress for not insisting that he come to them.
I totally agree. So let me ask you then, how dangerous would you say it is when these Trump-aligned broadcasters like Fox News, when I listen to Jesse the Jerk-Off Waters or Greg, Lilliputian Gutfeld, and they sit there and they spew this Trump, aligned bullshit, inventing this military operation. This is an all-out military war. We stopped enough fentanyl from these 23 boats with the 100 individuals that would have killed every American 5 times over. Interesting. Because from my viewing of the boats in the water, I don't see shit in there, right? To be honest with you, right? But the problem is millions.
And that's not where the fentanyl is coming from, by the way. The fentanyl comes from,
of course, it's come from China, Mexico and China.
Through Mexico. No, it goes starts in China, comes through Mexico.
Of course.
But they won't just show us the receipts. Like I think most Americans are pretty reasonable, where if you can show that you've got like cartel guys bringing in drugs that are going to affect our community, we want you to be, inventive. I don't see why having the Coast Guard interdict and stop them and bringing them to justice, like, we have the resources to do that, but to just do this without any evidence, and then, as you said, to follow on with this double tap strike, that is not who we are, and they better believe that they're going to be held to account. It may not be by their own, but in a year, it's going to be a very different Congress.
Oh, yeah, I believe so. But the worst part is that you have millions and millions of these Fox, Newsmax, OAN viewers that accept this bullshit as fact. What do we do?
Hugh, you'll have to remind me of his last name. Hugh Brim, is it Hugh Brim or?
Yes.
He sent out a tweet yesterday that surprised me. He called out Hegseth for throwing.
I think you mean Brett Hume.
I'm sorry, Hugh Brett. Brett Hume. Brett Hume sent out a tweet calling out Hegseth for throwing Bradley under the bus.
Sure.
So at least some of them have enough, decency and wherewithal to recognize what he's doing here. But you just have to wonder, like, if you're Bradley or your people similarly situated as Bradley, like, how much of this are you going to take? Like, and so where is the Lieutenant Colonel Vindman or the Fiona Hill or the individuals who stepped up, during the Ukraine corruption crisis that led to the first impeachment? They courageously came forward. They told their story. They had strength in numbers because they weren't the tallest poppy in the field. There was a field full of tall poppies of people who were courageous. That's what we need right now. And that's what I think our military members, Mark Kelly and others were speaking to, is that you don't have to go along with this, and that you are actually protected if you're being asked to do something illegally.
But I got a problem with Vindman, to be honest with you. I know a lot of people keep calling him a hero and a truth teller and so on. There were things, for example, he could have talked about. And I don't know if he was legally allowed to talk about it, but there were things he could have talked about, like the conversation that he transcribed, that he became aware of between Trump and Putin, about Zelensky and all that worried him. It worried him so much that he didn't say shit for 4.5 years until ultimately now. You know what, Eric, and I say that only
than most, though. He'd gone a mile farther than most.
Because I know what I came out and said, and I know the risks that I and my family accepted, and I know the losses, financial, and still did it. All right. Instead, I hear, 4.5, 5 years now go by. Now all of a sudden it really concerned me. Yeah. Well, if it concerns you that much, you know who stepped up and did something courageous? She got beaten down for it, did jail time, reality winner. With that one piece of paper, it made her nervous. She didn't know what to do, and she outed it as a whistleblower. He could have done the same thing.
Yeah, he went, as I said, a mile farther than most. I hear you. I'll take your point on that. But there's nothing close to that right now, Michael. There's nothing close to anyone who's willing to step up, and that's what really worries me. But you may not know this. Every member of Congress gets to appoint the next class of members at West Point Naval Academy, Coast Guard Academy, and Air Force Academy. It's one of the best parts of the job. And so every year we send off 6 to 8 people from our community. And you can only go through a member of Congress, a senator, or the vice president. And so we have a rigorous blind application process. And then I do a send off. And I talk to these 17, 18-year-old kids, and we bring their families in. And they're just, they're nervous, but they're filled with pride. They love their country. There's no hesitation about what they're going to do. And to just think that these assholes in Hegseth and the president are so willing to corrupt these young men and women who are going to be officers. I mean, that fires me up, that these officers, these young officers, deserve leadership and honor and integrity. And instead they get Hegseth and Trump.
So here's a great little talking point as you're out there speaking to become governor, which I'm, again, certain you will. How about the gall of Pete Hegseth speaking down to admirals and generals at some sort of what looked like a Tony Robbins type of a forum, right? Or some sort of what are these, what are they, these timeshare type of forums with him walking back and forth. He's talking to generals and admirals who have commanded, hundreds of thousands of men. And he's got his chest out. He's got his shoulders pumped, right? And he's sitting there saying, when I led the squadron from my platoon, your platoon jerk-off was 18 people. And you're probably the one screaming, oh, please, me, right? Me, look at my hair. It's all slicked back. I look the part, right? I mean, you're preaching to a bunch of guys who have literally been through battles. They have commanded hundreds of thousands of men, right? They have gone through war, real personal, emotional, physical war, and not to mention political war. And he's talking down to them.
But
your buttons aren't.
I was nervous when I saw the footage because I didn't know how the generals were going to react. And maybe that's shame on me to assume that they were going to. I was worried that you'd see this scene of them like hooting and hollering and clapping for him. And they just sat there and it was crickets. And he looked like, a complete loser and moron.
He looked like a guy selling a timeshare in the middle of the ocean.
But it was like that Jeb Bush, like, please clap moment, right? Like, you kind of looked at them and they didn't clap. And that actually, I left that experience in watching that coverage feeling better. But now that, as I said, we're seeing Admiral Bradley being thrown under the bus. Yeah. Boy, that has to be a signal to these guys. Like, they're not going to protect you. Hegseth, he'll get his pardon. Admiral Bradley, you're not going to get your pardon. And so speaking out now and finding strength in numbers is probably the only way that we're going to be saved from this. Otherwise, it's going to be too late.
Yeah, I agree with you. So this brings us to sort of Trump's new proposal, what I was talking to you about before, expanding this travel ban to citizens of 30 countries. Now, let me be crystal clear. What the vast majority of these countries have in common, they're Muslim majority nations, and several of them, of course, African states. What do you think is the common political theme here in your view? And what's the actual national security justification, if there is any?
Yeah, I mean, first, he's a moron. Right? He's not been to any of these countries, doesn't understand their cultures, doesn't understand their worth, doesn't see them or their value. And then again, I'll make it personal. My mom was first diagnosed with lung cancer. We had a Pakistani American doctor, and my district has one of the largest Pakistani American diasporas in the whole country. And this doctor, who was trained in Pakistan, gave her a fighting chance, helped remove her lung, got her through radiation, got her through chemotherapy. And she had, some of the best care from an immigrant. And, when you have a shortage of doctors and medical professionals in our country, because we don't have enough medical schools, not enough nursing schools, you have to rely upon immigrants who are trained professionals. And so my family personally benefited. She got many years beyond her diagnosis because of somebody from a country that Donald Trump doesn't like. And so that's why it's such a idiotic approach to immigration, to not understand that there's a lot of value in these countries when you do it the right way. And especially when you attack like the needs that you have in your own country as far as labor shortages. But he's just going to make us less in every way, less in our humanity, but also just less in the cures that we find, the care that we get, and the costs that will go up because of a lack of labor.
But this administration is framing this entire scenario as, and I love how he does this on everything, preventing terrorism, despite absolutely zero evidence that nationals from these countries pose elevated threats above and beyond anything. He's taken the one guy, for example, and by the way, the whole attacks on Somalia, you know what that stems from, right? He hates Ilhan Omar. Okay, great. Listen, there are things that she says I like. There are things she says I don't like, but he truly despises her. So now Somalia is top on his mind, and he throws
Michael, what has happened on his watch? Let's just tick through what's happened in our country since Donald Trump has been president and Kash Patel has been in charge of the FBI. You had the leader of the Democratic Party in Minnesota assassinated in her home. You had Charlie Kirk brutally assassinated at a public event. You had this individual drive into a Mormon church and kill other worshipers at that church. And then you had two National Guardsmen ambushed, just blocks away from the White House. What if instead of having the FBI go after people like me and you and all of his opponents, what if the FBI was charged by Kash Patel and supported by the president to go after domestic terrorism? So that's like the cost here, is that, these guys aren't even looking at the real threats that are happening and won't take responsibility for what has happened on their watch.
When the holiday season rolls around, it feels like there's a party every weekend. All the sugary drinks add up, but this season, no. I'm going to reach for Sol's out-of-office gummies instead. Same fun vibe, low in calories, and zero hangover. Look, I spent years pretending I could bulldoze through life on caffeine, bad decisions, and whatever cheap liquor someone shoved in my hand. And let me tell you, the hangovers, they can be brutal. The kind of pain that makes you reevaluate every life choice that you've ever made. And in my case, well, there's a lot to reevaluate. So when I finally got my act together, I started looking for ways to unwind that didn't feel like self-sabotage. And that's where Soul comes in. Soul is a wellness brand that believes feeling good should be fun and easy. And for once, fun and easy doesn't mean waking up feeling like you negotiated with the mob boss and lost. So look, I've been taking their out-of-office gummies, and here's the truth. They hit that perfect sweet spot. Mild, relaxing buzz, a little lift in mood, enough creativity to make even my holiday to-do list seem manageable. And with 5 different strengths, you can dose it like a grown-up, which, based on my life experience, is a skill that I highly recommend. And if you want to class it up a bit, try their out-of-office beverage. It's an alcohol-free way to unwind, and it actually tastes good, and it doesn't punish you in the morning. And trust me, if I can avoid a hangover, trust me, anyone can. But the real game changer, Soul, also has a variety of products specifically designed to help you get a better night's rest, including their top-selling Sleepy Gummies. Deep, restorative sleep. You know, the kind I wish I'd had years ago. And because it matters, especially now, everything they make is organically farmed, USA grown hemp, vegan, gluten-free, low in sugar, and federally legal. I mean, a rare combination of things I can actually feel good putting in my body. Now, here's where you pay attention. Take advantage of Soul's Black Friday, Cyber Monday deal now. And for a limited time, get 40% off your entire order. So go to GetSoul, GetSoul.com, and use the code Cohen, COHEN. That's GetSoul.com, promo code Cohen for 40% off. Don't miss the best deal of the year. Go now. Last year, I bought my parents another gadget that they never opened. But this year, I wanted to give them something that actually matters, something that keeps giving year after year. I realized the best gift I could give my family was time, more time together. And that starts with health. And that's why I'm genuinely excited about Superpower. Superpower is a new kind of health platform that helps you finally get answers about what's really going on inside your body and what to do about it. One simple lab test, checks over 100 biomarkers, hormones, metabolisms, vitamins, minerals, thyroid, heart health, you name it. Then they give you a full report and a personalized action plan. Nutrition, supplements, lifestyle guidance, all of it laid out clearly. There's no guessing, no confusion. I mean, I've already signed up, and I love seeing what's actually happening inside me instead of just hoping that I'm doing it right. It's like a health GPS for your life. And the best part, every gift membership comes with a free $49 Superpower gift box, ready to wrap and give. For $199, you're giving something thoughtful, meaningful, and potentially life-changing. So give your loved ones something that actually lasts, better health, and more time with you. So go to superpower.com/gift to get a free $49 premium gift box with your gifted membership. That's Superpower, superpower.com/gift. And after you sign up, tell them that you heard about it on this podcast. Help support the show and start giving the gift that really matters this year. No more than they'll take responsibility regarding drugs. You need drug prevention. You need treatments. You need courses. You need education on the damages of drugs so that people don't even get started with them. You know, just because it's there doesn't mean that you have to do it, right? In fact, if people were educated enough, you know, maybe a good portion wouldn't, but that's not what they're about. It's all about this sort of animus and the fracturing of America, making us divisive so that we look at these 30 countries as less than us. It's very, very Third Reich. Now, I do want to say, I want to talk about like this. I call it the plot twist of the year. Yeah. You have real estate. What's that?
Marjorie Taylor Greene?
No. Better than Marge. Okay. It's a good one. Maybe we'll find time to get to her. But I'm talking about real estate developer Steve Witkoff and son-in-law extraordinaire Jared Kushner literally holding private conversations with Russian intermediaries about ending the Ukraine war. When you heard that, especially being on the committees that you are, when you heard that, what was your initial reaction? What went through your mind?
Past is prologue, right? You remember in the beginning of the Russia investigation, we had evidence that Jared Kushner, during the first Trump administration transition, was trying to set up a secret back channel with Russia. Do you remember that?
I remember.
He had asked if there was a way to communicate with them, not through formal channels. So, he could put us in a, compromised position because we wouldn't know what was being discussed or what was being leveraged by the Russians. And so this looks very much like that. And what I don't understand in their approach, because it's so un-American, is they're trying to, at best, like both sides this thing, like as if like Russia is owed the same like dignity and decency that the Ukrainians are owed, which is complete bullshit when you look at who aligns with our values and who doesn't. And so we have lost a lot in the world because of what these guys are doing. And let me just venture a guess. Would it surprise you, Michael, if we found out that Witkoff and Kushner had some side deal or side investment or side spec on some future project in Russia? I mean, that's always the motivating factor here.
I'm not thinking about them being so bold as to do some deals in Russia. I'm talking about actual cash in hand to do deals anywhere, including the United States. I mean, for God's sakes, how is it that there is no investigation into the fact that within 30 days after Kushner leaving from being a senior advisor, which, by the way, Trump didn't even want, Ivanka was the one that pushed him into doing it. Otherwise, Daddy, I can't come, and so on. And he wanted his own people around him. Imagine 30 days after, he opens up a fund. He's never had a fund before. He's never been involved in a fund. He is the scion to his father's billion-dollar real estate company, the Kushner Company. By the way, the one deal that Jared did nearly bankrupted them, except for somehow the Qataris came in through Brookfield Properties, gave them money. They bought out the lease, and they bought out the whole building and saved Kushner Company from going bankrupt. Instead, put another $250 million in their pocket. But Kushner gets over $2 billion, literally, from Saudi Investment Authority, despite the finance committee for the Saudi Investment Authority saying this guy is not competent to run our money. Yet Mohammed bin Salman, the same guy who, after the execution of Jamal Khashoggi, the very first phone call goes to who? Right, Kushner. So you're going to tell me that this is going to be anything different? You really think that Vladimir Putin doesn't have a complete and total profile on both of these guys, knowing what it is that makes them tick, what it is that they need to give to them so that they go back to Trump and say, we want no NATO for Ukraine. We want demilitarization. We want assurances America will give them no weapons. We want to make sure that we get all the mineral rights. We want property. We want land that we have not seized. Instead of giving back land that we illegally seized, we want more. We want this. We want that. And they're actually pushing that narrative, despite what you just said. Ukraine aligns with America's values, not Russia.
And there's nothing about our values. There's no value that those guys would not sell to just enrich themselves further. And to go back to where we started, they are operating in a way that we didn't even see in the first administration, which is they believe they're invincible. They don't see a day where they would be held accountable. And they also believe that even if Trump were to leave office, and I actually think many of them are crazy enough to not even believe that that is going to happen. They think this is the new norm, that the country is going to be run like a family office once he's no longer able to operate. They believe that they would just be pardoned and never have to be held to account. Now, Hegseth, as you pointed out, he's put himself in a different position because he's, likely on the hook for an international crime where a pardon could not save you. But Kushner, Witkoff, all of these folks who are cashing in on their access to the administration and, the capital markets around the world who will do deals with them, they don't think they're going to be held accountable. And so the Democrats have to project and telegraph that all of your asses are going to be in witness chairs next year. So get to know the hearing rooms of the Judiciary, Oversight, Homeland Security, Armed Services Committee. You're going to be spending a lot of time.
And let me be very crystal clear to my viewers and to my listeners in this. I was brought up in that witness chair 7 times, 63 hours of testifying. I could assure you, neither Kushner, nor Witkoff, nor even Pete Hegseth, when you have to answer those questions, it's easy when you have the House, when you have the Senate, when you have the White House protecting you. And you can turn around and say to Eric Swalwell, asking a legitimate question, what you're saying is disgusting. You're a disgrace, and so on. And then they waste the 5 minutes of time that each person gets. I'd like to reclaim my time. No, I'm going to reclaim my time. No, you're not. And then they turn around and they change the entire topic and read off, some pre-prepared, statement. Which brings me to this question, because you live this.
Having and you've been traumatized by it, I can tell.
You can, that's for sure. Having been targeted with conspiracy theories and smear campaigns during the last administration, you ever wonder whether you're back on Trump's enemies list today and what that means if you actually win the governorship?
Well, Michael, you may have seen that just a couple days before I announced I was running for governor, Bill Pulte, who is like a low-level appointee, referred my mortgage to the Department of Justice, and doing it in the same nonsense way he did with Adam Schiff, Tish James, and Lisa Cook from the Fed board. It's nonsense. I mean, there's absolutely nothing there, but it's not lost on me the timing that it was being reported that I was about to announce a run for governor. And so I know that's what these guys do. And so I decided, in the spirit of everything I've done with the Trump administration, I was not going to play defense. And so within a week of that referral, I filed a First Amendment retaliation and privacy violation suit against Pulte. Because again, you have to stay on offense on these guys. You can't just go rummaging through mortgages, making up bullshit and putting people under investigation, using taxpayer dollars, making them spend a lot of money, something you are very familiar with, to defend themselves because they're vocal critics of the president. That's not how it works. And what has impressed me, whether it's me or Schiff or James or Cook or Mark Kelly or Alyssa Slotkin or anyone who's been targeted by this guy, not one of us, not a single one has hid under the bed, has shrunk, or has gone quiet. Instead, we have decided collectively, individually, but collectively in the way we're doing it, that we will choose the truth over Trump, and the truth will win.
Yeah, amen to that one. So, Eric, let me close with this. So, as we all will acknowledge, California is a global economic powerhouse. California is a cultural force. It's the fifth largest economy in the world. In closing, because we have a really big audience here, if voters remember one thing about why you're running and what's at stake in 2026, use the remaining time to tell them, what do you want that to be and why you are, like I already know you are, the right guy for the job.
California is the 4th largest economy in the world. But what does that mean if you can't afford to live here? And so I'm running because people are scared and prices are high. And I have experience in Congress taking on the guy who is scaring Californians. And I will protect them and fight for them against this guy, but also write a chapter of bringing down costs, expanding growth, and modernizing the state for what I call a new California. And that's something I've done before, not just in Congress, but as a city council member and a planning commissioner in a city called Dublin, where we had low income, low expectations. the high school that I went to, we didn't see a lot of people go into college when I graduated in 1999. I came home. We invested in affordable and market rate housing. I worked with the labor from building trades, developers, builders. We added homes to the community, brought in high-end employers. We even got a Whole Foods. And that high school where just 25% of us went to college in 1999, today, 96% go to college.
Wow.
So I've seen a turnaround story for a city that I helped lead, and I want to do that for the rest of the state. That's what a new California is. And Michael, let me just say in closing, because I'm writing a comeback story for this, state that I love, you individually are your own comeback story. And I think, is the writer from one of my favorite shows, The Wire, David Simon, once said, he said, we all get a second act and we all get to write our own endings. And you are living this second act. And I'm so proud of you in the way that you're doing it, the truth that you're telling, the people you're holding to account, and obviously the army of people that you've built around you to do it. So here's to you, my friend, and I look forward to seeing you in person soon.
And to you as well, and I look forward to getting out to California and stumping for you because, like I said, I know you well enough to know that you are the right guy to replace Gavin Newsom. If there is anybody out there, they shouldn't even run against you. It'd just be a waste of time and money.
Thanks, my friend.
All right,
I appreciate it. All right.
Good seeing you.
Yep, you too.